San Francisco and San Jose are on the list of the top 20 caffeinated cities in America. The Daily Beast website actually conducted a survey. Next on Food and Wine this week with Leslie Sbrocco and her guests, they discuss the region's growing number of small specialty coffee roasters.
Thanks, Belva. Coffee is one of the world's most popular beverages, with around 8 million metric tons traded as a commodity annually. That makes more than 500 billion cups of coffee. But a growing trend, particularly in the Bay Area, is away from viewing coffee as a commodity to thinking of it as an artisanal product, roasting it according to each bean's taste characteristics, and sampling it within hours or days of roasting. We visited 2 local roasters to find out firsthand how they prepare for that perfect cup of joe.
Coffee is a tropical fruit, grows on trees in the equatorial belt around the world between the tropics of Capricorn and Cancer. Grows best at altitude. That's where you get the hardest, finest beans. Once the fruit has been removed from the cherry skin, it's fermented, it's washed off, it's dried in the sun. We receive this dried parchment at the end of the process. That is then hulled to remove the parchment skin, and the green bean emerges, and then shipped here to the United States, where we roast it at PEET'S.
The first step in the process of roasting is to dump out the sacks of green coffee beans. They're then transferred into the roasting machines, where they're heated until the roaster is satisfied that they're ready. The roaster checks to see how they look, how they smell, then listens for a special double crackling sound that indicates they're ready. As soon as they reach the perfect point, they're dumped out to cool naturally as they're circulated around in a metal drum. Then they're packaged. The process is exactly the same for both these operations, one large and the other small. From every batch of coffee the roasters taste, and they taste samples. This is known as cupping and ensures perfection in every sip. There are so many dedicated coffee drinkers in the Bay Area, and here to talk about it are James Freeman of Blue Bottle Coffee and our own Bay Area Bites blogger, Denise Santoro Lincoln. Now, Denise, it's fascinating the rich history that we have in San Francisco for coffee, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. You know, it started all the way back in the gold rush when James Folger came over with his brothers to mine for gold, but unfortunately he was a little too young. He was only 14, so instead he sold roasted beans in the mining fields. He made a lot more than his brothers.
He was the one that actually won in the gold rush.
Exactly. Right? And then, you know, he went on to start Folgers in San Francisco, and then also Hills Brothers is a San Francisco company.
That's right.
And then in the 50s and 60s, other more European roasting type companies such as Cafe Trieste started in San Francisco, and then Alfred Peet started his store in Berkeley in the late 1960s.
You know, which is incredible to think, because James, when we think about kind of that second wave of roasting in the 50s and 60s, it really was about quantity, not quality. You know, everybody was drinking instant coffee, and you know, it was how much coffee you could drink, not the best coffee you could drink. And you know, nowadays we've got a whole third wave, don't we, of roasters?
Exactly. There's still the vast majority of coffee is commodity coffee, and it doesn't taste very good. It's not prepared very well, but a lot of the roasters, my generation, are really delving more into single origin coffees and trying to bring out the differences among single origin coffees and trying to
explain what that is for our people in terms of what a single origin means.
Well, basically contrasted that with a blend of coffee from many different origins. Mm-hmm. Blends have a great history, and I think there's a context in which blends are really delicious, but single origins have more distinctiveness, mm-hmm. and they can be perceived as being more different from each other, and that can be very interesting to have one range of taste that's completely different from another.
Similar to wine, if
exactly.
you will. You know,
yeah.
The Bay Area is so known for its wine in terms of saying this comes from a different place, so the terroir expression is very different. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And what about in terms of our effect on the rest of the country for coffee? You just opened recently in New York.
Yeah, in Brooklyn, in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, we opened a roastery and a coffee bar. And it's been great, sort of our style, our beans out in Brooklyn. Right. It's been a lot of fun.
Right, so what we do here seems to percolate, or certainly on the West Coast, percolate across the country. And let's talk a little bit about the importance of, or not importance of, organically grown coffee or fair trade coffee. What do you see when you're out talking to coffee lovers?
Well, you know, as a consumer, fair trade is important to me. And what I'm seeing when I talk to a lot of these third wave coffee producers in San Francisco is that everyone is incredibly interested in fair trade. And not only fair trade, but more than fair trade, and also organic beans.
And explain that a little bit, James, what fair trade would mean for a consumer looking at it.
Fair trade, I think, is a great thing. If you're looking at commodity coffee versus fair trade, I think it's great to urge the people that are roasting commodity level coffee to move up to fair trade. Fair trade is a charity-based initiative, and the minimum price for fair trade really hasn't budged in 10 years. This coffee, which we get from Ethiopia, one of the few women-owned coffee projects in Ethiopia, is basically, we pay 3.5 times the fair trade price.
Right.
So what I'm looking for, and what a lot of my colleagues in the roasting business are looking for, is a quality-based initiative that rewards good coffee growers for excellent quality, and that way I think they're going to thrive more than a charity-based initiative.
So it's really about asking your roaster too, what is in my glass? For example, we have this wonderful coffee in our glass that has been produced by a woman, so grown and by a woman at the place of origin.
Exactly.
And you see that as a trend as well.
Yeah, totally. Like, a good roaster will know what's being roasted and what his customers or her customers are drinking, and talk to your roaster. You should, find the roaster that's nearest you, talk to your roaster, and get a sense of when it was roasted, why it was roasted that way, and who produced it.
Do you see more and more of these new roasters coming in to San Francisco?
Yeah, and not only that, but these cafes that sell these roasts, also they'll give you all the information that you need. Right. They're really knowledgeable.
So just ask.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'd like to thank my guests, Denise Santoro Lincoln and James Freeman. Don't forget that you can find out a lot more about coffee and view video about the cupping process at kqed.org/thisweek. You can view this segment, find a link to Bay Area Bites, and add your comments. So until next time, cheers to a nice cup of Java.